Hi everyone. This is our exercise 12 for group members Devi, Kopika, David, Priyanka, and Saurabh. Moving to the next slide. The first question was related to scenario one, where we need to share our ideas as a presenter. What we need to keep in mind. So here are a few pointers which I think are very important from a presenter point of view. First of all, is focus on one thing at a time and present effectively, building a personal connection, focusing on the core message of the presentation, being calm, smiling, and having frequent eye contact with the audience. Second is confront inner critics, taking deep breath and reducing stress and anxiety, because sometimes we ourselves devalue our presentation skills. Third point is acknowledge stakeholders for their hard work and audience for their valuable time. Express gratitude towards stakeholders and audience with energy, passion, and happiness, which is very, very important as a presenter. A fourth point is adding stories, metaphors, analogies to have personal connections with audience so that they can relate to it and they remember after your presentation is done. To make your presentation effective, it's really important to rehearse the presentation several times or several days to get comfortable with your voice, style, and body language. Being very specific about time limit and keeping your audience engaged all the time is very important. If it gets beyond time, sometimes audience lose interest. Keeping your slides simple and effective to ensure core message is not lost by unnecessary visuals is really important. And confidently delivering the presentation even when something went wrong or in case of mistake is ensuring that your delivery is seamless. Moving to next slide, which is part of scenario two, where we had to discuss our own personal leadership attributes, strength and weaknesses. So for me, my strengths are that keeping presentation organized and planning ahead of time, being simple and effective slides, expressing gratitude towards all stakeholders and audiences. My weaknesses are it's hard for me to memorize nitty-gritty technical details, especially when it's a new language for me, and remembering or memorizing syntax, line by line is not very feasible for me. I can explain the conceptual and logical details, but then when it comes to bookish language, it's really difficult for me. The second point is there is always a factor of nervousness when I'm presenting, but I think that's also sometimes a strength because you need that to perform well. So the next few slides will be presented by my team members. Thank you.
Um, Thank you very much, Priyanka. So still on scenario one, how to improve your presenter skills. Um, and first of all, practice speaking in front of others. Like practice makes perfect. Use less tests and more visual in your presentation. Visualizations has a way of giving information to your audience. Leverage your personality. So know your personality and leverage it to your audience. Maintain eye contact with your audience. Maintaining eye contact with your audience show you are comfortable and you are okay with your presentation. Keep it as short as possible. The longer the presentation, the more it gets boring. So always try to keep it as short as possible and drive the right information. Moving on to the next slide. So for the next slide, so my personal leadership attributes. So I'll start with my strength. So my strength is leveraging my personality during every presentation, keeping presentation as short as possible, maintaining eye contact with the audience. So that's what I'll say are my strengths. For my weakness, I would say talking too fast during presentation might not allow some audience to grab the information and understand what I'm saying. Second one would be me not being very good with visuals. So sometimes I find it really hard to find the right combination of color or graphs. So that's for my personal leadership, both my strengths and my weaknesses. So I'll be handing over to my next colleague to take over with the many slides. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, David. So the next one, so this exercise we have to review a presentation. There was like 3 videos that we have to review. So the one that I will review is from TED Talk about religions and babies by Hans Rosling. So we're using the presentation review checklist. For presenter, so the voice and no vocalized pause, yes. In fact, he spoke pretty fast. And he needs to work for smiling, friendly, approachable because he has a very serious approach. And he need work in the communicated as well because a little bit too fast. And about the body language, he need to work about that one because he was consistent with the long pointer stick, that pointing to the PowerPoint screen. So for the eye contact, he also need works because he has a very minimal eye contact and he was busy with the pointer stick again. And strong understanding topic, yes, he did good research on the topics. He also good prepare with the presentation because he prepared the long pointer stick and also some boxes for a sample uh, visualization at the end of the presentation. So for the good pace of delivery, it works because a little bit too fast since the presentation was held not in an English-speaking country and it could be a challenge for some audience to understand. Easy to follow, it works because the pointer a little bit help to follow the story a little bit, but it's also distracting. And he used effective use of time and he also enthusiastic for the topics. For the point not distracting audience, he need works with that one because the pointer sticks actually kind of like help but also distracting. So for the presentation, he was giving a clear introduction, strong message, uh, constructive arguments, and clear closing and next steps as well. So for the visual aids, the slide enhanced presentation, it need works to make it like more organized. The slide did not distract audience. Yes, the slide focused on the visualization, and also the slide is clear. So for the visualization, it enhanced the presentation. Also, it's easy to follow because the usage of animation, the showing the timeline also help. And the accuracy and citation, yes, the presenter, the source and citation at the end. So for not distracting audience, it works, can be improvised. For the audience, effective responses to question. There was no question and answer section in this video. Keep audience engaged. It works. More engagement can be improved from the video. We can see some of the audience lose interest in the middle of the presentation. And understanding of the topic in it works since the sensitive topic, it could be biased for the audience to understand the topic. And entertain, yes, the audience seems entertained with the topic. So sometimes they will clap or laughing whenever like he talk or he using the pointer. And inspired, and it works for that one. And the next one, I will talking about the personal leadership attributes. So my strength, I think my strength is straight to the point. And also I made a clear and simple presentation. And I admit when I made the mistakes. And my weakness is I get nervous too easily. And sometimes it's hard for me to explain things with words. So for the next one, I will pass it on to Kopika.
Thank you, Devi. So this is the presentation review checklist for the TED Talk by John Wilbanks on the topic how opening up of medical data can lead to innovation in healthcare field. So the presenter has various merits in terms of voice and avoiding vocalized pauses, clear communication of the topic and consistency in the body language, maintaining eye contact throughout the presentation, strong understanding of topic, and he was well prepared and he was successful in using the time effectively. So due to these points, the presentation style was not at all distracting. However, he could work on being more pleasant to appear more friendly and approachable, and also it could be a little slower to provide enough time for audience to recollect the information, and he could use a simple language so that anyone in the audience can understand the information being presented. um, so talking about the presentation, it conveyed a strong message and it had constructive arguments, clear closing, and next steps. But the introduction could be more effective and informative rather than directly jumping into the topic. And the visual aids is the slides where it enhanced the whole presentation and it was not distracting the audience and they were clear. And the visualizations also enhanced the whole presentation. It was easy to follow, it was accurate, and it was not at all distracting the audience. However, there was not much interaction with the audience, so there was not a Q&A section, and there was not much engagement with the audience. There should be some interaction with the audience so to keep them engaged, and also he could add more humor element in the presentation to make them entertained. Moving to next slide. So from his presentation, I understood how to be more confident while presenting, and importance of having deep knowledge about the topic being presented, and why should the content in the slide must be brief and concise, how to use visualizations effectively, and how to use examples effectively in a presentation. Moving to next slide. So talking about personal leadership attributes, on the positive side, I always try to gather deep information regarding the topic, and I try to maintain a pleasant attitude while presenting the topic, and try to construct a presentation in a simple manner in terms of language and examples while we talk to the audience. On the other hand, most of the time I end up on adding too much information in slides rather than making it brief and concise, so that I feel to create a captivating PowerPoint presentation, and I find difficulty in maintaining eye contact throughout the presentation. So now I move to Saurav to present further slides. Thank you.
So this is the third video presentation review checklist. The video was by Jared Thorpe, and the topic was visualizing the world's Twitter data. So the video revolves around how big data is changing, and the presenter tried to keep its point regarding the Twitter search data. So regarding the presenter, the voice and the other merits were highly accurate. The throw and pitch of the presenter was throughout the presentation was accurate. Now, throughout the presentation, a lot of humorous idioms were utilized by the by the presenter to keep the audience engaged. However, there was no consistency observed in its behaviors and actions. There was a lot of waving of hands, and the eye contact was also minimum. The following up was also difficult on some parts of the presentation, and the visuals also felt quite distracting. Going to the next slide. Now, talking about the presentation in itself, the introduction was weak and had no clear connection with the title of the presentation, which is the Twitter data. And moving in the middle, it felt that there were no closing statements made regarding the title of the presentation, and the ending thoughts were also vague. However, the visual aids and the visualizations used throughout the presentations were highly accurate, and a lot of third-dimensional visual plots were used for interpreting the data. Now moving to the audience, there was not enough evidence. Like for example, there was insufficient evidence to make remarks about the audience response. The following two suggestions are made that the 3D visuals were utilized accurately, which was a good thing about the presentation. However, the immersive experience of those visuals made a little bit more distracting for the audience. Moving to the next slide. So these are the three strengths and weaknesses regarding my personal attributes. I personally believe that expressing a strong understanding of the topic and concept before giving the presentation, Utilizing speaking notes during the presentation also helps a lot, and limiting the speaking time to the desired time limit for a particular slide is also important. However, there are a few weaknesses that I believe could be improved. Now, to make the presentation sound more intriguing, there is a frequent use of sophisticated words and phrases, which makes the fumbling of the flow quite irrelevant. Now, reading over these slides caused me to stumble a lot, a couple of points from the slides, making me keeping away, swaying from the presentation. And finally, not having a clear and crisp throw of my speech also is a hindrance in terms of presentation. Now, on that note, I would like to end the presentation. Thank you so much.